In the Ebadi home on that dark night, festivities were in full swing. A DJ was playing Persian pop hits, ladies were dancing with their grandchildren, and Layla was delivering her usual toast consisting of a reading from Omar Khayyam. This particular year, the Persian New Year fell at the civilized hour of 9:32 p.m. on March 20th, which made Layla and Hussein very happy. They didn't have to cancel Pilates or golf, respectively, and they were able to serve dinner at the proper hour. Layla rightly felt there was something disgusting about scarfing down sabzi polomahi, herbed fish and rice, for breakfast in the middle of the night. Every year, the Ebadis took the opulence of their festivities one step further than the previous. As always, the ballet boys stood outside to park the guest Bentleys and BMWs. The entry was occupied by the Haft-Sin, a table on which 7 items starting with the letter S were displayed. Everything in the tiny subculture of Tehrangelis was a competition: children, clothes, income, travel. The denizens of this tiny universe vacationed in the same spots and dined at the same Italian restaurants, always looking for an opportunity to one-up each other as they exchanged kisses. In the weeks preceding Nowruz, Layla visited her friends and assessed their Haft-Sin tables so she could make sure her display would be more beautiful, more opulent, more impressive, just more. This year, her Haft-Sin was an especially glorious work of art. On an antique embroidery, she placed lentil sprouts, wheat germ pudding, dried oleaster fruit, garlic, an apple, sumac berries, and vinegar. They represented rebirth, affluence, love, medicine, health, and patience, all the qualities and virtues one is meant to take into the new year. But Layla being Layla, she couldn't settle for just 7 S's, and so she liberally added a few more items to the table. Some dried nuts, candles, a mirror, some decorated eggs, and goldfish. On most Haft-Sin tables, worshippers place a holy book, a Quran, a Bible, or a Torah. Layla's table always had vintage poetry instead. This year it was Hafiz. Layla regarded the ancient Persian poets as gods and goddesses, emblems of a time when secularism, Sufism, and Zoroastrianism coexisted in her country. For Layla, the poets represented the true roots of Nowruz, before the Muslims invaded her beloved Persia, when wine flowed freely and a woman's body was celebrated. The pièce de résistance, with an imposing gold coin, the profile of the Shah engraved into it. This sikke, representing wealth, was a gentle reminder to the guests that the Ebadis, too, had it all. Beyond the Haft-Sin table, the party began. Layla had transformed her garden into a paradise of revelry. She had laid down a dance floor interspersed with squares that lit up when stepped on, making everyone feel like Michael Jackson circa Billie Jean. And she even eschewed the customary DJ for a live band that miraculously played songs in French, Spanish, and Farsi. Much as Layla trained Rosa Maria and Elena before that to cook a perfect borscht, I could imagine Layla supervising the band, making sure they could perform perfect renditions of Sultan Aqab, Parole Parole, and Gypsy Kings. As Bobby and I entered the party, Bamboleo was the band's choice, and while the lead singer's Spanish accent didn't sound as authentic as those of the parking guys outside, the beat still got the party going. "Babak, Layla, finally," Layla called out as she approached us, martini glass in hand. She gave us both a kiss on each cheek. Her giddiness suggested she had already imbibed 1, maybe 2 drinks. When I first got to know the Ebadis, I always expected that their demons would come out with a little alcohol. But I was wrong. Layla was the textbook happy drunk. Not even tequila unleashed the nightmares of her past. She led us to the bar as I wiped her lipstick off Bobby's cheek with the palm of my hand. "You have to try the drink of the night," she said. "It's an apple cilantro martini in honor of Nowruz. I invented it." I explained to him that I wanted the drinks to be made with things that begin with S, Siv, Sabzi. Layla flashed 2 fingers to the bartender, who immediately poured 2 concoctions for Bobby and me. I took a sip, and to my surprise, apple and cilantro didn't mix so badly with vodka. One by one, the hellos began. Bobby and I had to make our way around the room to kiss and make small talk with every one of Layla and Hussein's friends. We held hands as we circled the room, really not for the show, as much to steel ourselves against the inevitably painful talk. Tannaz Maliki approached us. Tannaz's face got tighter each time I saw her, her eyes more cat-like, her cheekbones more pronounced. Tannaz was the funhouse version of Layla, whereas Layla got discreet cosmetic surgery, a refreshing nip and tuck. Tannaz deformed her face, never beautiful to start with. Whereas Layla wore designer clothing that suited her body and age, Tannaz picked clothes that were too colorful and too tight. It didn't matter that her outfit cost $1,000. She made it look cheap. Worst of all, Tannaz was divorced, a rare and shameful thing among the Persian diaspora. The focus of Tannaz's middle age was spending her ex-husband's oil fortune and finding inventively passive-aggressive ways of making herself feel better. Kara June, you've lost weight, she said as she air-kissed me, careful not to smudge her caked-on makeup. Shayad, I said to her, showing off one of the bits of Farsi I had picked up through the years. Maybe was a useful word for someone with commitment issues. Or Shayad, it's the light, she retorted, mimicking me as she pointed lazily in the direction of the orchid-shaped candles floating in the pool. Bobby leaned in to give Tannaz the obligatory kisses. Hello, Mrs. Maliki, how are you? He asked stiffly. Babak, she said with concern. Tina tells me you have writer's block. Tina Maliki, Tannaz's Wall Street success of a daughter, had been engaged for 4 months to a Persian broker descended from the Qajars. Whenever Tannaz felt small around the Ebadis, she trotted out this fact. How would Tina know that? Bobby asked. I haven't talked to her in over a year. You said it on your Facebook page, I commented. You wrote an update that said you were indulging your writer's block with a marathon of Doris Day movies. Doris Day, Tannaz echoed suspiciously. I saw her once at an overpriced food shop when Tina and I were golfing in Carmel. She has too many dogs. It's not natural. Are you playing golf yet? Tannaz asked Bobby. No, I've managed to resist the temptation, Bobby replied. It's a shame. It would make your parents so happy. And with that, Tannaz moved on to terrorize somebody else. Please, Bobby said as he finished his Sieb and Sabzi martini, take me away from here. Take you away? Are you kidding? I love Nowruz. It's my favorite time of year. You've got to be kidding. It's one family obligation after another, Bobby said. Your family is never an obligation. Bobby laughed. If only that were true. The truth was that Nowruz was a hell of a lot more pleasant than New Year's Eve. The dreaded December 31st, when women all over Los Angeles put on our best cocktail dresses and trolled around from party to party, searching for a kiss from a buffoon in an Ed Hardy shirt. New Year's Eve was designed to make single people feel lonely when they didn't have someone to kiss at midnight, and I had always been single on New Year's Eve. Even those 3 years I was with Jacques, we were apart for New Year's. He was with his family in Paris, and I was with Bobby at some party in the Hollywood Hills. Bobby, no surprise, always found someone to kiss and more by midnight, and I was left to sing Auld Lang Syne and feel forlorn. But Nowruz didn't bring up any of those emotions for me. When the Persian New Year arrived, there was no kissing. Instead, Layla sauntered around the party giving all the children, yes, Bobby and I were still considered children, gold coins to bring us luck. Between not being kissed at midnight and receiving gold, I'll take the gold, I uttered to Bobby. But that's not why I really love Nowruz. Sure, the gold was nice, and the spring cleaning did wonders for my closet. But it's exactly that sense of obligation Bobby despised that made me love it. Every year I knew exactly what I would be doing for 2 days in March. The Wednesday Eve before Newry's was Charshambe Suri, when Layla invited a small group of people to jump over fire, literally in her backyard. This year, I finally got the lyrics to the fire song down. It was something about giving your yellow to the fire and taking its red, meaning you give your sickness to the flames and take in their strength. The fire jumping was a kind of bizarre and specific tradition I wished I grew up with. Raised by strict Catholic parents, my mother viewed Christmas and Easter as regimented obligations. My father, a one-time radical hippie, took it a step further and believed fervently that all holidays were created to fuel the economy and hoodwink children. When I was 6, he informed me that Santa Claus was created by Coca-Cola to sell more soda to the clones who populate our world. I told him I loved Coke and asked what was wrong with selling soda. He didn't appreciate the back talk. He might have blown up a police car once, but he was just as conservative as the Ebadis when it came to disrespecting one's elders, at least now that he was one. It was always a one-way conversation with my father. He was right, and the clones were wrong. I longed to be a clone, to be hoodwinked. I longed for Christmas trees, Easter egg hunts, church on Sundays, any form of tradition or routine that would save me from my formless life. But instead of gifts under the tree, I got screaming matches, extramarital affairs, and more recently, divorce. No wonder I took the liberty of applying to a boarding school on the other side of the country. Boarding school is a world of structure and tradition, the very things I requested when I prayed to the generic God I had been forced to create for myself.
I really loved that passage in the book. You have these great sort of long descriptions that really create an amazing sense of scene. But before we get to that, I want to ask a more basic question about the book. The reading, as you said, is from the point of view of a 29-year-old girl, and she is in a relationship with Bobby, who you mentioned in the book. And he's gay, and she's sort of serving for his family and friends as his fake girlfriend, and she's been doing this for years. And this is sort of the plot of the book, how it starts out. What inspired this? Why did you choose to, narrate it from her point of view, and what made you choose this topic?
So in terms of her point of view, I mean, one reason I wanted to choose this topic, primarily I'm a screenwriter, and I have written some movies in the past that deal with Iranian characters, but generally nobody wants to make them because then you have to cast Iranian actors, and most of them aren't stars. So, it's a sad fact that, you just can't get many of those movies made. And I think one of the original impetuses, other than the fact that I love books and have always loved books and think bookstores are like heaven, I just really wanted to start telling stories about a world that I thought I could reflect back, a world that was mine, and I felt like film wasn't the place that I could get that done. And so, I think that's one of the reasons I really felt like this had to be a book. And then once I started to write it, I wanted to find a character that was as far outside the world as possible, because I don't know, I thought it would be, both for the reader and for me as the writer, I wanted somebody who was not Iranian, and also because I'm male, so I didn't want it to be anything like me. I wanted to find someone as outside myself as possible to explore the world through. And I actually think that through her, I grew to appreciate a lot of the elements of Persian culture that maybe I take for granted. As I was writing the book and as I work on the book, I think I noticed so much of how vibrant the culture is compared to a lot of the American lives that people lead. So it was fun. It was fun to write in her voice.
Yeah, what were some of the challenges maybe associated with writing from an outsider's perspective about a community that you're familiar with? Seems sort of like an interesting reversal.
Right. Well, I think one of the challenges was I wanted to kind of toe the line between satire, and I think all satire has to really love its characters, but I wanted to push, the characters in this novel are very pushed. It's not, of course there are some Persian families in LA who are as ostentatious as the Ebadis, but I wanted to push them, and I think I needed, through Kara, to just find that balance because she loves them so much, and so that was important. And then the other thing, and this came up often when I was giving early drafts to friends of mine who are women, which is most of my friends, there were many times where they would say, a woman wouldn't do that. A woman wouldn't say that. And so that was, I always had to go back to them to really, because a lot of the book, without giving the plot away, has to do with her kind of pushing the boundaries of her own love life and sex life. And so I think I needed to really go back to female friends and make sure that things were hitting the right notes.
What about, she serves a very interesting plot device in the book as being sort of an essential part of this lie that Bobby is living. Talk a little bit maybe about why you made the decision to have this character living out such an elaborate lie for his parents and his family.
Well, in terms of the lie, it's a sin of omission. So Bobby and Kara meet in high school, and his parents assume they're together. And at that point, when they're 14 or 16 years old, it doesn't really seem to make much difference that they're lying. Of course, now they're 30 and lies tend to snowball, but so much of the book is about secrets and lies and the way, I mean, it's called the walk-in closet because, for a reason, because I think, the idea of the closet is one we know very well, but the idea of actually walking into a closet by choice, which is what Kara does, she doesn't really have any need to hide secrets from her own friends and family. In fact, her own mother in the book knows everything about her life. But the idea that she's walked into a world which is so full of secrets by choice, I think really fascinated me, because actually she finds that world more appealing, despite how difficult the secrets are. And I wanted to explore what that meant. And of course, ultimately, the question is, does she stay there, or does she need to break free in order to be truly happy?
That's interesting, because it's just occurring to me that in the beginning of the book, her life is a little bit bland. Her actual life is a little bit bland, but she is embroiled in all these secrets, and that brings a lot of the sort of interest and drama into her life. I mean, she's drawn to it for some reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that was very, when I was trying to paint her, I of course didn't want to make her background too boring, because it's a book, so those passages have to be interesting too. But by contrast to the Ebadi household, I would think that any reader who reads this would be like, yeah, I would rather be part of the Ebadi family than Kara's family, even though Kara's family might not have as many secrets and lies and, might be more honest with each other. At the end of the day, their life is just a little duller. And I think that there's something in the traditions, the glamour that she is really attracted to. And it's something, if you really look at it on an analytical level, there's something I've always been interested in terms of Americans' relationship to Middle Eastern cultures. There's both fear, but also some glamorization, and there's also a lot of intervention, and that's really what Kara's doing, is she's really intervening in this family's affairs. And so I think if you really want to, there were times where I thought about that, where I'm like, okay, this book is about something bigger, because if you look at it metaphorically, she represents her country, and here's this family that represents the order of their country, and she's going in and basically toppling it, which is what America does a lot of times.
Yes, that's true. And it's interesting about this family, because there are a lot of secrets in this family, but there's also a lot of genuine love and affection, and I wouldn't say that the relationships within the family are bad. There's just not there's a lot of love and a lot of affection, but not a lot of time spent together, but not a lot of actual intimacy. I mean, they're all sort of hamstrung by these secrets. It's an interesting portrayal, because there is a lot of love and affection there. These aren't terrible relationships the way that you would normally think of a relationship that full of secrets would be.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe that has something to do with the fact that in their culture, the secrets are the norm, right? It's not, I think for someone like Kara in her family, if somebody was holding a secret, it would be a big deal by contrast, because it's not the norm. Whereas in the Persian culture, everybody, at least the one that they live in, everybody is hiding some part of them. They don't really kind of traffic in the kind of intimacy that Kara and her friends and family are used to. So I think by virtue of that, it becomes almost normal. It's like that's just their way of communicating, and the way that they communicate affection is different. And Kara starts to learn that, and I think part of what the book is about is what happens to her once she starts to take on all of those traits, once she starts to act like one of them. Is she able to withstand that level of secrecy, that level of, hiding?
What was it like for you to sort of interweave all of these secrets? Because it is, it's sort of secrets on secrets, and as the book goes on, you discover even more deceptions behind deceptions. I don't want to spoil anything, but it is such a strong theme of the book. It's almost like it's just oppressing all of the characters in the book to such an extreme degree. I don't know, what was it like to kind of craft all those secret lives for everyone?
Oh God, that's a tough one. It was fun. I think, first of all, it was fun because it's always more fun to write characters who have secrets, who have conflict, So in that sense, it was fun. And the other thing is that the nice thing about writing a novel versus writing screenplays is most of the screenplays I write, I have to outline them very carefully, which is, I think most screenwriters do that, whereas with a novel, I let myself just discover it over the course of a long time. And so most of this book actually wasn't plotted out, and many of the big secrets that are revealed were not supposed to happen. They just kind of did. And then, of course, I had to go back and change the whole book because suddenly I was like, oh, wait a minute, now this person is hiding this, or this person is connected to this person. So that was part of the fun of it, was as I was writing, more things just revealed themselves to me, and that made it a blast.
What about the place itself? Because Los Angeles plays like a really big role. It looms really large, I think, in the book as almost its own character. And it's not entirely a flattering portrait of LA and the culture there. What was it? I don't know. What's the role of LA and place in the book? Well, I mean, it's interesting that you would say it's not necessarily flattering. I don't know. I mean, I love LA so much. I've lived there 16 years, and I'm so excited to go back there tomorrow. I love the city. But I think that LA, the mythology of LA represents so much. I mean, it's a city of secrets in and of itself. It's like there's the facade that people have, there's the real life, there's like the sheen of Hollywood versus like the grittiness of the streets. And then I didn't think, I guess outside of Shahs of Sunset, that the Persian community in LA had really ever been represented. So I really wanted to get in there and show how they interacted with the rest of LA. So, you know, Kara works in the film industry. In the novel, one of her best friends is a successful actress, and so there's a lot of the interplay between how the Persian community hits against Hollywood, hits against other parts of the city. And I guess I don't know. I guess maybe there is some criticism of some of the elements of LA, but I think at the end of the day, it's a celebration of LA. Well, I thought there was something interesting about the fact that it was often hard to tell what was real and what was fake. Even, I mean, obviously in the characters and the lives that they were living, but in deeper ways too. I think the main character struggles with why she's in this kind of fake relationship and why she's wrapping herself up in all these secrets. And there is sort of an allure to the lies, and the lies aren't altogether bad either. I mean, there is kind of this play, I think, between what's real and what's fake, and I thought that sort of, I don't know, dovetailed really nicely with Hollywood and Los Angeles itself. But also, as you say, there is like sort of a very glamorous part of LA and a very gritty part of LA, and that very much appears in the book too. There's a lot of sort of very gritty underbelly type stuff as well. I mean, was that kind of an intentional interplay on your part?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I mean, for me, it was the whole book is about the relationship between exterior and interior, between, you know, facade and truth. And so I wanted as much as possible to explore that, not just for the characters, but for the city too. And I think, like you said, it's not an easy answer. I don't think that at the end of the book, there's necessarily a 100% answer about what the right way to be is, that you have to be 100% truthful or 100%, you know, like you said, some of the secrets aren't so bad. Some of them, you know, are kind of just easy to keep. So I think for Kara, there's a journey she goes on where she finds her balance.
You mentioned that there haven't been a lot of books or written about the Iranian community in the US, and I'm wondering what reaction you've gotten from people who've read the book in the Iranian community or outside.
The Iranian community, oh my God. You know, not outside of some of my close Iranian friends, it's been very hard to engage the Iranian community with it. I felt the same way. I made a short film called Revolution that was also about an Iranian family, and I found, I mean, that short played dozens of festivals. It got distributed on DVD and online, and in all of that time, I don't think a single Iranian has come up to me and said a word about it. And it didn't even, there's an Iranian film festival and it didn't even get accepted. And I've gone to that festival and I'm pretty realistic about my work, you know? So the only reason I think it didn't get accepted is because it dealt with gay themes, and it's just not a theme that the community at large really wants to take on. And since this book came out, I have talked to a lot of mostly Iranian academics in LA. There's a pretty vibrant academic community, and a lot of them have been really supportive of this because they said it's the first Iranian novel to deal with gay issues. So to them it's kind of exciting, but every single one of them said if we do any kind of event, we have to play that down. Otherwise nobody will want to come and nobody will want to talk about it, because within the community at large there's just not that, I don't know, that willingness to engage with the topic. So far it's been tough, although my cousin Nina is going to make it an underground hidden tarot. So that's the plan.
No pressure.
No pressure.
And I'm wondering what was the most challenging thing and the most rewarding thing about writing a novel? I mean, you mentioned that you're a screenwriter by trade. That's the medium you normally gravitate to. What was the challenge and the reward, I guess, of writing a novel instead?
The most challenging part about writing a novel for me is the editing and rewriting process. Screenplays are very sparse, and they have software you can use to make changes. And with a novel, it's like anytime something changes in the novel, there's this beast. There's like this 350-page beast, and you have to go through every line. Like, what does this change affect? And so, I find just the rewriting process of it really, really hard. The writing of it is a blast because it's a discovery process. The most rewarding part is that, for me at least, it's just that to share a novel with people is such a direct connection. When you make a film, it becomes so removed from you by the end. There's so many people involved in the making and the distribution that by the time anybody sees it and reacts to it, it doesn't really feel personal. Whereas, anybody who's read my book, who has talked to me about it, whether in person or online, I'm so thrilled and moved because it's like I wrote it directly, delivered it, and somebody responded, and there was no intermediaries whatsoever. And so that feels like a more special connection between audience and author.
I mean, what are you hoping that people take away from your book? Maybe that's a hard question.
Big question. What do I hope they take away from my book? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think for me, my whole life, and the work I really care about is just about being authentic to yourself. I think that, in the journeys that the characters take in the book, lead them to different places, and like we were talking about before, I don't think that there's a right way to live and a wrong way to live, but I think each of us has a right way to live for us, and it's about being authentic to that. And if it's different than people around you, even people you love, everyone has to just accept that people have their own authentic self and their own path. And so I think that's what I would like them to take away.
So those are all the questions that I have, but I guess we wanted to open it up to some audience questions, if there are questions that people have.
I'm going to bring you a microphone so that I can hear you. Special.
I love the analogy to Dynasty, of how Hossein and Layla are like Crystal and Blake Carrington. Was that something in the writing of it? Did you actually think about Dynasty at all when you were shaping the characters, or was that just that come up later as a discovery or coincidence? It was very interesting.
No.
With Kara being Sammy Joe.
Kara, Sammy Joe. Yeah, Kara. She would definitely be Sammy Joe. No, I love Dynasty, obviously.
So do I.
No, but I didn't. It's not something I thought about when I was shaping the characters. But it was when I was writing the book. I think there's another portion of the book where Kara talks about what Disneyland would be like if Layla and Hossein had their way. If it was like a Persian Disneyland, and she talks about what the rides would be and what the treats would be. So I mean, there were definitely points where I thought about, well, what would it be like to reimagine my favorite TV show, but Iranian? Or what would it be like to reimagine Disneyland, but Iranian? What would it be like if our whole pop culture became Iranian? And so I thought, and she talks about some of the Iranian pop singers and compares them to American. So I think I did try and just look at that. Yeah.
So you talked a lot about the difference for you between writing a screenplay and writing a novel. but finding Kara's voice when you like sit down to write, is there something very different, specific you have to do to kind of channel Kara?
No, I don't. I mean, it's such a hard question. Almost everything I've written has been in the voice of somebody else, and it's usually a woman. I mean, right now I'm writing another book that's from the voice of a 15-year-old girl, so, I mean, somewhere inside me I have a 15-year-old girl trapped. But I don't know, with voices and stuff, it's just, I guess it's almost like a muscle as a writer, like when I go into something and I just try and feel like the character. I mean, I guess it's like what an actor would do if they portray a role and they go from one role to another, and you just have to like get yourself into the space of that character. But I don't know that there's anything special I do other than just listen, you know.
I know I've asked you this separately, but maybe other people have the same question, which is, did you think about writing a story of Kara of walking into the closet and closing the door, and why did you choose to let her take her own path instead of absorbing into the Ebadi family?
Okay, I'm gonna try and answer in a way that doesn't give away everything about the ending. No. You know, I mean, I didn't feel, I felt like ultimately Kara, she spent a decade or more, you know, a decade and change as part of the Ebadi family, and I felt like in order for the story to really have an arc and resonance, something had to change. And I think ultimately, you know, I won't give anything away, but something happens in the book which kind of forces her to see things differently, because she has been living status quo since she was a teenager with this family, and I did want something to shake her. Yeah.
I'm wondering what your greatest challenge was in navigating this project and how you dealt with it, or what you did to get around it or overcome it.
My greatest challenge in navigating the project, honestly, writing the project was so much fun. Like I said, I find rewriting, even with movies, I find I'm a much bigger fan of the beginning of creation. I love the discovery. I know some people don't like that. Like, that's my favorite part, is the blank page. It's when somebody asks me to edit 350 pages that I'm like, go to hell, you know? I don't want to do that. But so that was really hard. And then honestly, now the biggest challenge is just getting people to engage with the novel. And I have learned, as my agent Mitchell warned me, that books are tough. You know, a lot of people don't read anymore, and a lot of people read maybe 1 or 2 books a year, and they probably are going to pick The Goldfinch, and that's what I would pick. You know what I mean? That's what I read over Christmas. So, you know, for me to expect that people are going to, you know, take that one reading vacation they have and pick this one over Donna Tartt is tough. And so that's been, I've had to get really good at the shameless part of the PR of it, and that's been really, it's been a challenge. But, you know, I love Twitter, so.
Any other questions out there this evening?
Last one.
I was very impressed with Bobby's medical knowledge, and also a lot of details about like Black Death and about HIV. And I was wondering if you did any research, like medical research. There are a lot of details in the book. I was wondering if you did research.
Oh my God, yes. I wouldn't, obviously, with every project I do, if there's anything that sounds like it's smart, it comes from Wikipedia or, I mean, I obviously know nothing about epidemiology and the bubonic plague and a lot of the subjects that this book deals with, so luckily the internet provides me with a wealth of resources to take from. So yeah, but now I know a lot about those subjects because I researched them.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. That's about all the time we have for this evening. Let's give it up for